Hello, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm currently a junior in college, and I debated in Pakistan during my high school years. I was part of Team Pakistan in 2023, and I'm super happy to be doing this training for you guys today. I hope it's helpful and useful and does help you improve your debate at the end of it. Yeah, so today we'll be doing reading for debate, where the goal of this training is like first to help you guys figure out and find the most useful resources you can get on reading, and second, how you can end up applying it to your debate rounds and motions. So these are the things we'll be going over today, and feel free to skip through anything. Just play it on 2x if it feels redundant to you. So first is like, why should you read for debate? And I think that this was one thing that wasn't emphasized enough during my high school years. And in retrospect, I would have wanted to get into reading a lot earlier and should have been reading a lot more to get better at debates. But there is like a very dominant narrative that you can win in debates without reading, which I think isn't true. I think that first, like reading brings you a lot of like personal satisfaction. It's great to be well read on the world. And especially like there is a time when there isn't a lot that you can learn from debates if you're not reading. You hit like a curve or like plateau where you are not getting more utility from debates. You're not learning that much, you're not being intellectually stimulated enough. And that's the point where you're like probably you want to complement your debate with reading more so it becomes like more effective for you, or just like more fulfilling for you. Second, I think it's like a lot of the times it really becomes like the determining factor for your win or loss. And what I mean over here is that when we are practicing or when we are learning about debates, we're doing like case prep, we're doing mock debates, we're trying to improve our speeches and everything. But there comes a point where you know how to debate, you know how to make a case, and you can construct really good cases, but you just don't know what else you can add to it. What sort of analysis does this motion on this argument needs? And you're like sort of borrowing analysis and case making from different debates and applying it to different ones. I think in that scenario, reading can really help you because it will help you learn more so that you get your analysis is more fleshed out. You have more information that can be applied to debate, and just generally it helps you like really differentiate yourself from your opponent, because if you are more well read, then your arguments are going to be more well grounded. They're going to make more sense. They're going to be closer to the debate about what the debate is actually happening, where it is happening, what it is actually about. You'll be making the right arguments rather than just like making different arguments and like really trying to stretch it to like further link into the motion. I think third, it also like helps you win on the margin, especially when a lot of teams are debating in the debater land. If you have heard that from judges, that probably means that you're making arguments that theoretically make sense, but when you try to put them in the real world context, it just doesn't work out, because that's just not how the real world works. So I think that if you keep running into problems where like, even if you're winning, your arguments are just like contextually false or aren't very applicable to the real world, this is probably like the point where you need to incorporate more knowledge within your debate rounds rather than sort of like repeating the same thing over and over. And I think lastly, it is also really helpful when you are debating internationally or if you're doing like online tournaments over there, because like you have a wider pool of perspectives and where people are coming from. They're coming from different circuits. And in that sense, like having more knowledge can really help you win over the other teams, and you're probably like wouldn't fare well if you are just sticking to your own perspective and style of debating. So yeah, I think like reading generally is great and you should do it regardless. Second is like what type of things you should be reading. So I think like the way I think about reading is like broadly in two ways. First is like more content heavy reading, more contextual reading, where you're trying to like understand in the long run about what's happening. So this looks like readings on like history, philosophy, political theory, maybe like, broader topics of economics. Those are like a lot of theoretical works that if you have a good understanding of them, you have a good understanding of the world in general, and then you're able to supplement that reading with news, which is more about current affairs and about things that are like currently important in the world. So I think whenever you're reading, like try to have like a good mix of both. Your content reading is something that will really help explain things from scratch, and you will be able to learn and build your material and content up from ground. And then news is something that will help you stay up to date about what's currently happening. So you would know what are the sort of motions that can come about, what are the sort of argumentation or debate that we can be having, just because this is what the news cycle is in the current affairs world. So I would say like try to do both as much as you can so that both of them like go hand in hand and like contribute to each other. If you're also doing both of them, it will be very helpful for you to retain that information as well, because you will be able to like link your whatever you're reading in news to different content that you have learned, different like in-depth topic researches that you have done. You will be able to think about both things at once that will help you create like make like stronger links between the news that you're reading and the general topics that you have researched on. Um, so, and I think when it comes to like topical research, in like a in WSTC, you can also just divide amongst your teammates, see like, who have different interests. That person can read a particular topic and like do more topic-wise research on that. I think politics and economics are like two things that everyone should be reading about and should be doing in-depth research on. But there are like different themes that people might want to like divide among themselves. Like if someone is more interested in social issues, someone is more interested in finance, someone is more interested in South Asia, Latin America, so on and so forth. You can divide that so that when a motion comes, you're able to share that information and you're more effective. The next thing then is like how you can find resources. And I think this is like a huge thing because a lot of the times when you try to learn more, you try to read more, you hit into paywalls. And then, your access is restricted, which is super unfortunate. I think there are still ways for you to get access to paywall sources. It's just about how you are going about it. I would suggest that if I were you, I would go onto Reddit and try to find free sources. There are people, I would find a way to access sources that are not free, basically. There are people who would be telling you how to do that. If there is something on the internet, there are ways to get to it. It takes a bit of research, it takes a bit of like work to figure out how to get them, but it's worth it because the paywall stuff or restricted stuff is pretty interesting to read. And if you search enough, you will end up finding it. But when it comes to resources, there are a couple of things that I would suggest people to read. Obviously, in newspapers, I've listed them down. Super great. Or like and I think like if you are in a school, um, you should just try to convince your admin to get you at least like subscription to one newspaper. It's not like these admins can clearly afford it. And so it's like one subscription. You have to like pay weekly or monthly. I think there are like a load of admins that would be able to afford. It's just like you have to like put a bit of pressure. So and it's totally worth it. Like these Baywatch stuff is like great. I love reading them. So I think it's worth the investment. Try to convince your admins for it. And then there's Substack. Substack is great. It wasn't that popular when I was in high school, but it's super popular now. It's a way for journalists to publish their stuff straight up. It's like independent journalism. And there are so many people. There are so many great people who are writing on Substack. There are people who are writing for newspapers and also their own Substacks. I've like listed a couple, but it's a lot like Instagram or other social media platforms where you are able to build algorithm by reading news and by subscribing to different writers. There are obviously good and bad writers, but you can probably like figure that out by looking at their credentials or their feeds. So it's like a great source. Like you can just like wake up and scroll through Substacks and like learn a lot more. There's a lot of free. So there's definitely paywall stuff there as well, but a lot of good free stuff. Then there are podcasts. All of these podcasts are free. They're great. You can start them. Like some of them are pretty they're pretty like basic and surface level. So you can just start from there and you will get a good understanding of what's happening. And then there are think tanks. I think think tanks are super underrated resource that a lot of people don't read enough. I'm personally a huge fan of think tanks. So the way think tanks work is like, firstly, a lot of think tanks have their own focuses. There are think tanks that most of them that are based in DC are doing a lot of geopolitics and security research, just because that is like very like major concern and interest of the government, or they're working with a lot of intelligence networks. So they're like doing a lot of very interesting research on like geopolitics, global affairs, international security. And these are made up of people who are academics and who are researchers or retired professors. So there is expertise attached to the work that they're producing, first. And second is that they're producing a load of primary research. So a lot of their research that is based on current news is they're like doing it directly by working in the field rather than um, getting it from the internet and then making their own opinions, for instance. So a lot of think tanks produce a lot of primary research that ends up then coming to the news. They host a lot of like conferences, have like a lot of information meetings with like government stakeholders that helps them get access to that information. Then they're able to publish reports. And I think that third is that they're publishing long-term reports as well. They're publishing a lot lengthier articles. Like if a news article is like maximum like I don't know, like 1,000 to 1,500 words. Think tank reports would be like a 5,000 word because they're really like doing a lot of deep analysis. I think it's like it's wonderful to read from think tanks. You can also like try to figure out what a think tank focuses on and then try to diversify your reading base. So CSIS or critical threats do a lot of security focused stuff. Brookings, on the other hand, does a lot of socioeconomic research. CFR does like a lot of, as the name suggests, it does a lot of like foreign relations or US foreign policy research. A lot of the people who are working there also like retired ambassadors. Hudson does a lot of like research on like Asia security, a lot of critical mineral research. I also interned at Hudson, so I got like a really good view and understanding of how think tanks are working, and I think it's like a great place to get your readings from. I will also just like give you guys like a quick view of what think tank pages look like, um, just like how you can scour through them. Sorry, that was my bad. Um, so you can like see how you can like learn more about it. Um, and also think tanks are, I read most things on think tanks are free. So it's also great. Like this is great research that you're getting for free. Wait, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is like CSIS, one of the leading think tanks. Great work that they produce, and and their work is like also super interactive. So like you go and this like page would actually like go into the depth of the content matter that they're discussing, and they will back it from like data and sources. So there is like a lot of empirical mathematical data that you can get for you to, and not necessarily that you can use it for debates, but it gives you a deeper understanding of the scale that we are talking about. It gives you a better understanding and like helps things make more logical sense to you. And the argument seems more convincing because it is backed by a lot of research and information. So even if you're not necessarily using it for debates, it will help you remember and read in that information a lot better. So they're like super interesting. You can like literally get more information on certain topics again and again. You can also just like look like if you like an article, you can go to their author. You can see that author's expertise. Most people would have done at least their PhDs, and then you can read more stuff from the same author on the similar topic, and that can help you build your content and topic-wise information a lot better. Um, yeah, and just be very cautious of what are the perspective of framing these articles are doing, because most of these articles are working in conjunction with governments. So their things would be stuff that would also fall in line, if not too far away from it, from government own perspectives and their own end goals, or at least by government, like a lot of the actors that are within the government. So that helps you like understand the perspective or the current discussion or narrative that people in different like metropoles are holding, or people in like various position of powers are holding. So yeah, I think like they're, and also like they're like doing a lot of like recent news. They're great for recent news. Also like a lot of podcasts that you can watch. I wouldn't go into the depth of like watching their events on or conference webcast. I just don't think that they're that helpful, or like they have like that much information. Then there's critical threats. They post a lot of updates um on a lot of like conflict areas, which is great. Like Iran update, you are getting like daily updates. They had like a lot of information on Russia, Ukraine war, and these are like a lot of like Iran, for instance, the topic that does not have a lot of information online or from like on like a lot of like newspapers, or don't have a lot of like I would say like information on what's happening in Iran right now just because of the censorship. But they do like a great job in bringing those updates. I think like one of these articles go into depth of like where are the protests happening or how did the protests like expand over time, which gives you a better narrative and like better like understanding of what when we say protests in Iran, what do we actually mean about it? Who are the people that are involved? What are the different factions? They would be doing that in-depth research for you. And then for a lot of their Russia work, they actually like tell you like what are the regions or cities that are under attack, what are the sort of battles that are happening there. So when you think about like Russia-Ukraine war, we are like thinking of it in like a very like monolithical sense that it's two countries fighting against each other. But they would be like these like think tank reports would be really breaking it down into like smaller chunks and pieces and really like going deep into it for you to get like an actual really in-depth understanding. A lot of that understanding, it's like it again, it's like very um contingent whether you will be able to use it in debates. But I think like if you have information, like information never goes to waste, and there will be ways in which you will be able to use it. So I think rather than making that calculus in your head, like in your mind all the time, okay, whether will it benefit me in debates, will it be applied to debates? I would suggest that you just go in and read things. And honestly, once you start reading, like you find so many ways to apply it to your debates. A lot of the times I would read things that I would feel would never be used for debates, but then you find ways of using it. Like, trust me on that. That information always becomes extremely important within debates. Yeah, so those were, I think they're like great resource to definitely go and read from think tanks. Then we have, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay. Then we have like YouTube videos. These are great for building your content or topic-wise knowledge. Um, I think like most of these videos, Crash Course is super short, but that like gives you a lot of like basic understanding of various topics. You can go like watch their videos. A lot of these like documentaries are a great thing. A lot of the documentaries are on YouTube. There are also like Netflix documentaries. Um, there's also documents by Michael Moore. If you haven't watched them, like you should definitely go watch them. They're great. Like they're literally like the nicest way in which like you can literally learn so much about a topic within like 40-ish minutes. Um, I love them and I think they added a lot to my general knowledge. Then there's political comedy. I think this is also super great. Sometimes when you're like reading articles, you get really bored. It's exactly like where political comedy comes in because you have people who have a lot of charisma, great personality, they're really funny, and you get to watch them. And I think that political comedy has like an other benefit is like how it also helps improve your style. So when style becomes like really redundant in debates, like these are like sort of like jokes or like way of talking about a topic that you are learning from these comedians, and it really helps to add flair in your own speeches as well. And even if you're like not intentionally doing it, you just end up picking up their way of speaking and improving your style subconsciously. So I think that's also super good. Most of them should be on YouTube. And then there's like a bunch of miscellaneous like reading stuff that I have. JSTOR is like a place for you to find like academic papers. I think that if I were you and I'm just like maybe like starting out on reading, or I have like a lot of stuff that I can already read from other sources, I wouldn't directly go to JSTOR because those papers can be a bit more dense. They're made for a different audience. They're not made like they're made for people who might already have an idea on the topic or who are doing some in-depth understanding and reading and mostly like in-depth analysis on different topics. So it's great. Like most like some of the articles are like super interesting to read, but they're a lot more niche than the more broad ones you can get otherwise. But if you think that you are reading a lot and you want to like branch out, then reading papers from JSTOR is great. And there are ways for you to like find them for free as well. Then there's Twitter. I think Twitter or X is super important when it comes to news in Pakistan. A lot of the news that doesn't get any coverage on mainstream media or gets censored out. It's something that will be discussed on Twitter. If you don't already like, read from there, it's a great place to start off to start understanding a lot of Pakistan's politics or issues that marginalized groups face that necessarily don't get time on the mainstream media. There are a lot of people who are posting about it. You can just like follow them, and then you will get into the loop of this Pakistan's news that you would have otherwise not be reading elsewhere. And then there's Reddit. Reddit is also like doing like a lot of like similar things as Twitter when it comes to citizen journalism. A lot of the times when there are protests or there is mainstream media blackout, Twitter and Reddit do become like the main source of information. It's about it's like about like you being able to decipher what's the news and what's just a very false opinion, but you will build that expertise eventually. Substack feed is also very similar. It's like the same independent journalists who are also like posting like their thoughts and blurbs in like in sort of like Substack tweets, and then do you have books? I wouldn't say that like, you start off with like reading books because books can be really boring, especially nonfiction books. They can be really boring. It can be a bit like it can be a bit hard to just read through them. And then that can really like put you away from reading at all because you don't find interesting material. I would only go for books if I feel comfortable with reading in general and I really like reading and I want to take up something more. I think just a good book to start your like debate stuff is Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I think I read it when I was like in grade nine. It was really good, and it got me really interested in CIA and its interventions. Another book is like so there's like a book series by DK Publishers, which is Big Ideas Simply Explained, which is they take like broader topics like history, feminism, political theory, economics, and then they like try to explain their subtopics really, like really in a very basic manner. I think it's a good book, but they do a lot of like basic stuff, so it might not be adding a lot of information if you already have a good idea of different basics. But definitely can give it a look. You can find it online, and see like start like read them just for like a general understanding, and then obviously know when to move forward from them. But yeah, that would be my advice on reading books. Um, yeah. So issues with reading, and I know this is like a huge issue. Like, when you were reading for debates, like first, it doesn't seem super applicable to different topics. It feels like it's like a bit redundant or useless, and you might never use it in debates. Second, is retention. When you're reading, you might not feel that you're retaining everything that you're getting from reading. And third is that it sometimes just doesn't make sense. Like you would be reading news and you're like, okay, what are we talking about? Like I don't have information on it. I don't know what the context of this reading is. There is like a huge learning curve because so many times you'll be reading articles and you would have like no idea what they're talking about just because like you don't have the context for it. And there are like ways to deal with that. I think that the last one that I talked about reading, not understanding readings properly is like you just have to be patient with it. You have to give it time. Obviously, the targeted audience for newspapers are like people who generally would have had some idea. So you have to like give it time. You have to keep reading and have faith that it will eventually start making sense because stuff will start linking up. And like when you're talking about the world, things will be connected to each other. And then you will be able to understand it a lot better. Second is that you can always just do a more in-depth research on the topic that you're reading about. So, for instance, if I was reading on, I don't know, like Iran's protests, like I would go and do like a full in-depth research on Iran, starting from probably like, CIA's intervention, Shah's regime, Khomeini's regime, more socioeconomic issues or like nuclear power plants of Iran. I would read all of that, and then the protests would end up like would start making sense. So you have to like start somewhere and do like the proper in-depth research for you to understand everything. And then lastly, is like there are a lot of YouTube videos who do the legwork of explaining everything from scratch. I know that Al Jazeera has this like video series which is Start Here. I don't know if they still are running it, but it literally like picks up something that's happening in the real world and it goes to the very like beginning of it of like where it all started. And that gives you like a really good understanding and context of like, okay, where like, what are we talking about? For the first 2 points that I talked about retention and application of readings, we can go more deeper into strategies for reading and how you can apply it better or retain the information better. So I think like first is like understanding what type of article it is. There are like a lot of different types of articles, but like there are three that I've outlined. This would help you understand like if it's like an informative article, like you will understand that okay, like, what is the information that we are talking about? And then that will like help you retain that information rather than just being very like, so the reason why you might not be retaining readings is because you're reading it very passively. Like you would read a novel, you're just like reading it if your mind is like might not even be there and you just like get through with it. But when it comes to articles, like you have to actively think like what am I reading and what are they talking about in order for my brain to really retain and grasp it. So like see, okay, like it's if it's like an informative article, like try, okay, what is the information it's trying to give me? Then if it's like an analytical argument, then analytical article, they're like probably trying to make a point. And then you are like, trying to see, okay, like what is the analysis that they're doing? What is the point they're getting at? How convincing does this seem to me? try to like you can also so when you're reading like try rebutting what they're talking about like okay like that's not true or like this is not how things work and that helps you like think about the article a lot more. And then the last ones are opinionated, which is just like opinion articles and op-eds, which are also super interesting and they give you like really good perspective that you can just like end up applying to your debates later. But you can just like see okay like this is what is their opinion, do I agree with their opinion, why do I agree with their opinion, if I don't agree with their opinion what is like the counter opinion to it, try rebutting it. That so keep thinking about the article again and again, and that helps you engage with the article, which will then help you remember what the article is talking about. And then it's like learning analysis from the reading. And this is like the easiest way of how you can use readings for debates, which is that you see their analysis because they are writing it in a way how you would do a debate. Because at the end of the day, the end goal of a lot of these articles or papers is to make a point. Not for the informative one, but like analytical articles or opinionated ones, like they want to make a point. They are arguing for something or they're arguing to convince that what they're talking about is true. So there's definitely like a truth analysis that they're doing within their article. So you try to learn the analysis that they are giving, and then it is so easy to just import that analysis for your own for like your own debate rounds. So it's like when you're like learning the analysis, like try to think of like, what are the actors or stakeholders that we are talking about? That will help you remember and recall those stakeholders when you are in a debate. Then it's like looking for like different argumentation metrics or like different like convincing metrics that they're using. Like, okay, what is causing this? Like, what are the different factors that are at play? If it's like not this factor, what else is like, what else is like creating this causation? So it's like being able to pin it on a different actor or like looking at the impact of it or scale of it. So those are the things that you can be on the lookout consistently, and that will make it very easy for you to remember in your brainstorms and in your prep that what were different things that were like that are playing a specific role in various issues, and then you are able to flesh it out better within your arguments. And then last is the context and framing they're using. Know that like all the articles are not impartial. They are being set in a specific type of a world. They have like their own affiliations and associations for why they are saying something that they're saying. This is to say that a lot of the times, like if people are debating, like their arguments might be very like US centric, or their arguments might only apply to like Western liberal democracies and not necessarily developing countries. So argue like articles help you understand what context and what framing we are talking about that can help you figure out what are the what are the opponent's context or framing and how I can break those framings. A lot of the times if you don't break the context or framing, your arguments are not going to stick because you're working. So if I'm making an argument about Pakistan but the debate is happening about the US, opponent like has set this ground about the US, and I never really make the point of changing that context and winning that context over, my argument is just simply not going to work because it is like not going to work in the US, right? So you can understand the framing and the grounding that an article is providing for you to understand how they're doing it, how they're making it more plausible, and how you can within your debates like break other sides' context or like bring your own context and framing. It helps you like really diversify your arguments as well because now you're thinking about like different contexts that can exist. It can diversify when it comes to brainstorms or thinking about like various actors, thinking about like various places this debate can be happening in, and that can really help you diversify the content that you're taking in your debate rounds. And then last is like how you can then like how you should be thinking about your readings that can help you link it to debates. So I think that once I'm like thinking through all of the things that outlined earlier, when I'm thinking through all of them, my first priority should be that I'm thinking and linking different news pieces together or trying to think if there is like a link between all of them. And that will help me engage with the readings a lot better, and then I will be able to retain them better. And then second is that you're like try to have conversations or engage with your peers about like specific information. So the best way for you to retain and know application for a reading is like when you are like talking to your friends and you guys are discussing what's happening in the real world. And that will like that's like just like like sort of like a conversational casual debate that you're having that makes you like under like you're just like thinking through your thoughts and you are trying to analyze your thoughts a lot better. You're trying to weigh up your thoughts a lot better, trying to see what makes sense to you, what doesn't make sense to you. So that just discussing debates with other, like discussing reading articles with other people, like help you retain them, but also help you think through them a lot better and analyze them. That can just generally eventually help you in your debate rounds as well. But yeah, when it comes to like linking into debates, but I like if I'm like reading an article, I would think of like what are the sort of motions this article could apply to. So this doesn't mean that I'm like going to like pick like a random article on, for instance, like I don't know, like health, like children healthcare or something, and then I'm going to like read an article about like Venezuela, and I'll like try to like really like trying to like find a way between the two of them. That's just something which is very unnecessary and something that you shouldn't be forcing yourself to do. But think of like different motions this would apply to. So I am thinking about like children healthcare. I'm going to think about universal healthcare. I'm going to think about like Mamdani's like universal pre-K or childcare. Um, and like I'm going to think about like parents, I'm going to think about like women, their workforce, I'm going to think about affordability crisis. People can't afford childcare, super expensive. It's going to force mothers to drop their work because they're like probably the minimum hour of childcare is going to be more expensive from the wages that they're getting. I'm going to think about how it leads to like absent parent families. Children are like, if you are like affording more like communal healthcare, what is like the quality of it? What are people going to do if they're like in single parent family? What are they going to do if like they're not in very close knit communities? How does it add up to like burden of the parents? How does that change people's like choices of having children, et cetera, et cetera? So I'll think about like, oh, so many emotions or like children education and then like their upbringing and then all like the mental health stuff that you can also add there. But yeah, the point is like I would think about like so many topics this can apply to so that I'm able to branch out my information for different debate motions. And now that I will see like some motion that like is related to it, I will be able to make that link very easily with my like within my brain. And then like second is like you can also just look at debate motions that have been given in the past couple of years. I know there is a debate website, debatedata.io, which just has like a lot of motions. I'm pretty sure there are other websites as well. It's like you go through those, you read an article, you read a topic, or you've done like your reading for the day. You go through that website and you read like different motions that are being given out across the world and then see, okay, so what have I read which applies to these different motions? And that helps you think so much, and you start realizing that a lot of the motions that are being given are very like have a lot to do with the current conversations people are having across the world or current conversations that newspapers are having. And then you're able to just like think about them more. You're able to connect them to emotions. Think about what arguments you would be making now that you have this information and you know like the emotion is related to it or like can have like some argument that can be formed, even if like a second speaker argument or a small rebuttal that can be some like somehow come up in a debate about the specific motion. And then like think through them. And you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it like for every single article, but just this practice will help your brain like think more about like linking your readings to different arguments to different debate rounds. And I think that this will help like both in retention and application, but this is just like a drill that you can keep doing to understand the application. And you will see a massive difference in the quality of argumentation that you are doing because you are getting into into the practice of making more advanced, more well-informed arguments that you wouldn't otherwise do if you're just given like if like in a normal like like drills that you're doing, if you only have paper and pen and then your own brain, there has to be a limitation to it if you're not getting inspiration, if you're not getting information from outside of it. And just to make sure that you never really like, limit yourself and you have like a lot of thoughts, you have a lot of information, you have a lot of ways in which how you can take that debate, you need to read and then you need to do enough drills to understand how you can bridge your reading with the application of it in debates. And trust me, like over time, when you keep practicing it, it will become like a subconscious practice. Your brain will start doing it itself, and then it will become like far easier. And then the last one is like it's pretty advanced. I would probably like not do it for like unless I'm like pretty comfortable with the amount of knowledge that I have. It's like making notes and matter filing, which is just like simply put is um whenever you're reading something, you're doing like, especially when you're doing a lot of like your topic wise research, you start putting it into different categories and into different themes. So, if I'm like, I would have like a theme of, for instance, like social justice movements. Within that, I would like like go like subgroup by subgroup. I like talk about like different protests that are happening like across the world, different protests like Greenland, protests in the US, and start like, building various subcategories and sub themes from there so that I have all of my information in like one repository. The same as like matter filing as well. And then like I would like whenever I read something, I like try to plug it somewhere on my docs and go from there. I think like the issue with this is that first it can be like a lot of work with the lower marginal benefit that you can get. So it takes a lot of time to like just like when you're doing it, you shouldn't be like copy pasting from like from articles. You shouldn't be asking chat to summarize it and then like pasting it because that really defeats the purpose of you being able to retain. If you're just doing copy pasting, then you're not going to retain it. You're not going to remember. It will just become like another like I don't know your school book that you have to read through, which doesn't help at all. But when you're like making notes yourself and you're really like trying to think through topics, it will help you think through them, it will help you remember them, but it can be a lot of intensive work because it requires more time, it requires more effort. So only do it if you think that you have enough time to do the matter filing. But yeah, I think it can be a bit daunting of a work, but I think it's super great, especially when it comes to retention and when it comes to like being able to sort of categorize and compartmentalize the information that you are taking. Um, yeah, so let's do a couple examples. I know I've like just blabbered a lot. And if it doesn't make sense, that's totally normal. I Let's try to like run it over with an example so it sort of sticks and makes more sense. So the articles I'm like going to pull are available for free online, so you guys can read them at a later time. Oh, wait. Yeah, this is not free. Sorry. Gonna Wait, yeah, I'm back. I found out the hard way that DVC is not free. There are a couple articles that you can get every day for free, but it's not entirely free. My bad for that. So I've pulled a similar article from the Washington Post. And so over here, like we are talking about this like very recent news that came up about US lawmakers went to Denmark and reassured the Danish government that they wouldn't be taking Greenland as opposed to Trump's claim that they're going to like take over Greenland either ways. I think like when I'm like reading this article, there are like a lot of the things that I can like start thinking about on top of my head. It's like how like it will apply to debates where people are talking about democracy, but Ob is like making an argument about how democracy does not always work. You are like seeing an example of Trump abusing democracy. So it's like same as authoritarianism. Blah blah blah. Democracy is not always that good. But over here, like this is an example of how within democratic states you can have like lawmakers, you can have Congress, you can have Senate, have checks and balances on the presidential power, which is the point of democracy, to introduce enough checks and balances. And this is an example of like very like straight thing where like they like urgently went to Denmark to ensure their allies. So this would be something that I would be thinking, and I would be able to apply to debates. I would be thinking about a lot of like a lot of the reaction that we are getting from our NATO allies, which is a lot of Western European countries have been like pretty straightforward that like they don't align with Trump on this matter. What does that say about Trump administration versus NATO alliances? How is it going to change the tariff agreements that they were striking with various countries? How is it going to impact NATO or like Western European countries taking a stance against US, which has been a very contentious debate. I'm going to think about how he's like using the tariff as like a political weapon, how they can be utilized as weapons or like or be used almost as a sanction just if you don't have like political agreement. I would think about how does it okay, then I would start thinking about NATO. It's like success, it's like military stuff. It's like lack of success when it comes to fighting Russia. The lack of funding it has been having lately. I would when I'm thinking about like tariffs, I would think about Trump using tariffs as a political tool. Back in 2025 April, I will think about how those tariffs were like just used as a bargaining chip and as a, like a political coercion tool, but were never implemented to their fullest extent because they ended up cutting deals with countries. They ended up excluding a lot of very critical minerals, a lot of like critical products and goods that they needed. So I would think about those things. And that's like now you see that when I'm just thinking about these things, so many news articles are coming to my mind because I'm forcing myself to think about them. So this will help me retain all the information that I've done on the particular topic. And now I'm able to first like retain the information, but I'm also able to think how that can apply to so many different motions and how there can be like some response, some secondary argument that can come because I'm thinking about those things. And I'm pretty sure, like, I haven't read the whole article, but I'm pretty sure, like, if you go deep into it, like, you will be doing a similar thing. And then you can, like, think about the debates that you have done already where this could apply to. Similar thing is, like, this is an article on, like, banana republics in, like, Latin America. And when I'm just, like, from the get-go, I would, like, start thinking about banana republics that happened in, like, late 19th century, earlier 20th century in Latin America, how MNCs, I will think about MNCs, how they're so exploitative, how they exploit like a whole region, how they sort of like created their own government within those regions. If I don't know what banana republics are, this is the first thing I would want to like go Google search, understand more about them, watch a YouTube video or two to know what is the context they're talking about. And then like I will go like deeper into the article. I know the article discusses a lot of like South American countries, including like Peru, Chile, Venezuela. I will think about obviously like Trump's intervention in Venezuela, like taking Maduro back to the like taking Maduro to the US. I will think about all of those things. I'll think about what are like probably like people on the ground thinking about, what are like Venezuelans want, how what it's like their new leader doing. I will think about like obviously oil, whether Venezuelan oil is even like beneficial or helpful. The type of oil that they have, is it like going to be refined? Are there a lot of US companies who want to actually go extract that oil? I'll think about all the tensions that the Trump administration is having with those private companies, trying to force them to go to Venezuela when they're like necessarily walking away from it. I will think about the history of the US companies in Venezuela and how they like created the oil rigs and everything. Just because I'm thinking about those things, now I can apply to this particular topic to so many so many arguments or emotions that can come about CIA intervention, that can come about Trump intervention, that can come about it helps like understand and like break the monolithical idea of Latin America into different countries because we're talking about different countries. I'm able to think about a lot of domestic policies or right-wing populism that's happening in Latin America. How what does that say about right-wing populism across the world? Is it on a rise? Is it not on a rise? I'm thinking about those issues. What are the things that people want? What are the issues that people are facing? It talks about like how Peru is like doing really well economically, but there's a lot of militarization and a lot of the benefits don't really trickle down to a common person. I'll think about again like how good economic situation does not necessarily translate into good socioeconomic conditions for people. I will like think about all of those things, and then whenever like I'll think about like all the MNC stuff as well. So when I'm like thinking about these things, I would understand. Okay, there are arguments that talk about MNC's exploitation. This is an example of that. Like there are so many examples that I can find from this article that I can apply to those debates. There will be articles about like different countries like governments forcing or like are working in conjunction with like particular like private enterprises to ensure their success. I'll think about, you know, all the arguments you make about like closed economy or like state-led economy, East Asian tigers, and I'll think that okay, so this is how governments are like still working in conjunction with private companies to ensure profits for them and then take taxes from them that can like that works in like government's the benefits and incentives. So I'm thinking about all the arguments that I can make from my information from this particular article, and then that will help me make those arguments later on within debates as well. But this is just like a very like tertiary example that I've given. I'm pretty sure there's like a lot more that you can do from here when you are just like forcing your brain to think up of arguments and to think about different motions that can apply to, then you will be able to extract so much from readings rather than just reading the news for the sake of reading the news, because you wouldn't remember anything if you're just like passively scrolling through your newsletters every morning. But yeah, I think that this should be like particularly like sufficient for you guys for your debates, at least for the time being. And yeah, I'm extremely sorry this was like overwhelming, especially right before nationals. You shouldn't be like, you know, changing a lot of your methods or your ways of debating right before nationals, especially if this is something which is like a bit more long term. But obviously after nationals you guys will have a lot of time, you guys will have your summer vacations. This is a good practice to build up during that time. Um, and I really hope this was super useful. Um, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free if you have like any questions, you want any suggestions, you want me to like help you out in any way. Um, yeah, feel free to reach out. And yeah, have great nationals.